In the 5th year of our marriage I brought up divorce with Jason. The reason was that I found crumbs of potato chips on the passenger seat of his car. And he had never allowed me to eat in his car. He was surprised. Is it just for this? This time I didn't lower my head as I used to. I just looked at him and said very seriously, yes, just for this. 01 When I took the car to be washed, the staff member frowned and asked me, "Ma'am, there are snack crumbs in your car. I think it's better to have a detailed interior cleaning." I was stunned and subconsciously retorted, "That's impossible." Jason couldn't stand anyone eating in his car the most. He had fallen out with me several times because of this. How could there be snack crumbs in his car? The staff member motioned for me to take a look. I bent over and looked into the car, and I actually saw yellow potato chip crumbs on the passenger seat. They were still sprinkled with seasoning powder and scattered in the corner. When I drove the car home, I sat in the underground garage for a long time. Finally, I still turned on the driving recorder. After searching for a while, I quickly found the segment from yesterday afternoon when we got off work. After a moment of silence, the sound of the door closing rang out and a familiar female voice laughed, "You're quite punctual today." The voice was very pleasant, carrying the delicate charm unique to young girls. However, my heart sank at that moment. Jason said cheerfully, "Why did you get off work so early? Won't your supervisor say anything?" Luna laughed, "They all know my relationship with you. Who would dare to stop me? If a mature woman like me said such words, it would only make people think she was snobbish and affected, but if it was said by a young girl who had just graduated, it would make people think she was bold and kind of cute." Sure enough, Jason gave a light laugh and didn't say anything more. Suddenly, I remembered when we just got married. At that time, I was still working in his company. Once, I wanted to say hello to him when I met him on the road, but he walked past me as if he didn't see me. When I mentioned this when I got home, he just frowned and said, "I don't want the people in the company to know our relationship." What would they say about me? That I arranged for my wife to work here to seek personal gains through public affairs? After that, his parents also hoped that I could stay at home to take care of his daily life. So I simply resigned and became a housewife at home. But it turned out that he wasn't averse to his relationship with others. He was just averse to his relationship with me. The sound of a puffed food packaging bag being torn brought me back to reality. Luna was crunching on potato chips. Jason didn't say anything. "Hey," Luna said, "I dropped potato chip crumbs in the car. Sorry." "It's okay," Jason said casually, "we'll just wash it when we get back." After a pause, he continued, "Don't eat so many snacks. I'll take you to have something nice to eat later." There was nothing else after that. In the dim garage, I sat in the car silently for a long time. I wanted to control myself not to think about the past things, but I couldn't help but recall 2 years ago. I was in a hurry to go to work and didn't have time to have breakfast, so I took 2 steamed stuffed buns and got into Jason's car. He shouted at me to get out of the car. "Don't eat in my car." I explained anxiously, "I won't drop anything in the car. These are mushroom stuffed buns. They don't have much smell." But he just gave me a disgusted look and then stepped on the accelerator and drove away. I was left alone holding the buns, standing stunned in the garage. It was raining that day, and it was hard to get a taxi. When I was running out in a hurry, the heel of my high-heeled shoe broke. When I arrived at work, I was in a terrible mess and was severely criticized by the supervisor. I already had a bit of low blood sugar and I hadn't eaten breakfast. When I was standing, I felt dizzy and almost fainted. It was my colleague who gave me a pack of biscuits that helped me get through it. But now he allowed someone to eat in his car. It turned out that his principle wasn't unbreakable. It was just that he hadn't met that special person yet. I closed my eyes for a long time and took out the divorce agreement from my bag. This agreement had been printed out for half a year, but I never had a chance to take it out. To be honest, it was also because I couldn't bear to part with him. I had liked him for so long. This person had occupied my entire youth. From the first day I fell in love with him, I had been waiting for him to notice me. Then I waited until he fell in love with the campus belle. He got together with the campus belle. His mother didn't agree to their marriage and they broke up. He was so disheartened that under the pressure of his family, he randomly chose to be with me. But after waiting for so many years, I never waited for him to fall in love with me. Actually, at the first sight of Luna, my sixth sense as a woman had sounded the alarm. She was too similar to Jason's first love. Both had bright looks, passionate personalities, and were bold and cute. I noticed that his eyes lingered on her for a few seconds and then he approved her resume. Even though her educational background didn't meet the company's recruitment requirements, the first time that made me feel something was wrong was when Luna called once. Actually, it was all about business matters, but it was unreasonable for an intern to call the president directly. At that time, we were having dinner, but Jason suddenly put down his chopsticks and answered the phone in a flurry. His voice tightened as if he was a bit nervous. "Don't be afraid. I'll call Ministerly later and tell him. He won't blame you." After hanging up the phone, he was stunned for a while and then the corners of his mouth slowly lifted up uncontrollably. That night, he was in a very good mood. When he went to take a bath, he sang a song for the first time. And I felt like I was in an ice cellar. At first, Jason probably didn't intend to cross the line. That he didn't have much communication with Luna, and when there were occasional calls, it was all business. But feelings like this can't be hidden. Even if you cover your mouth, they will show in your eyes. He started coming home later and later, typing on his phone all night long, just like a young and inexperienced guy who had just fallen in love. No matter how much I cried or made a fuss, he just blocked me with one sentence: "If you can't go on, you can get a divorce." Then I would stop. Actually, thinking about it, it wasn't him that defeated me but my love. But now I didn't want to love him anymore. Getting a divorce just because of some potato chip crumbs sounded quite absurd. But this was the last straw that broke the camel's back. 02 When I handed the divorce agreement to Jason, he was typing and took it impatiently and threw it aside. "What is it? Do you want to buy a house again? I've told you many times that the housing prices now." I interrupted him. "It's a divorce agreement. You'd better take a look. There are some property divisions that I still want to discuss with you." Jason was stunned. Then he took the document over and casually flipped through it a couple of times and sneered. "Joey, when did you also learn the trick of crying, making a fuss, and threatening to kill yourself? I've supported you, provided for your food and clothing. Isn't that enough? Do I still have to accompany you to act in an idle drama?" I looked at him and said, "If you don't have Alzheimer's, you should remember that I originally had a job. It was you and your parents who insisted that I resign and stay at home to take care of you. Nowadays live-in nannies in Hangzhou start at 8,000 yuan a month. That's enough for me to support myself. So you didn't provide for my food and clothing. Instead, it was me who took care of you. Don't think too highly of yourself." Jason looked up at me in surprise as if he didn't expect me to talk to him like this. Then he threw the divorce agreement aside angrily and said, "What's got into you all of a sudden?" I said calmly, "I saw the potato chip crumbs on the passenger seat." Jason frowned tightly. "Just for this?" I nodded. "Yes, just for this. It doesn't matter if you don't agree. I'll file a lawsuit. But if this kind of thing gets blown up, it won't look good for you either." Jason stared at me fixedly. After a while, he snatched the agreement over, took out a pen, signed his name on it, and threw it back to me with a cold laugh. "Are you satisfied now? Joey, I'm telling you. Don't come crying and begging me like before," he said contemptuously, "like a dog." My heart instantly felt a sharp pain as if being clenched tightly. In the past, when I was the angriest, I also brought up divorce, but in the end, I was always the one who gave in and swallowed my pride to beg him to make up. He knew exactly where my weakness was. He also knew best how to hurt me, but now I won't do that anymore. I picked up my clothes. "Let's go. Let's go and get the divorce certificate, by the way." Jason didn't mock me this time. His expression gradually became serious. He stood up and looked at me fixedly. "Joey, are you serious? You know that the house you live in, the car you drive, and your quality of life and conditions are all because of me. You should think it over. Without me, you're nothing." I gave him a look. "Don't dawdle. The Civil Affairs Bureau closes at 5. We'll miss it if we're too late." "Fine." Jason frowned. "Joey, don't regret it. Getting a divorce certificate is much more troublesome than getting a marriage certificate. There's also a 1-month cooling off period. After going out, Jason didn't even look at me. He drove away directly, leaving me alone at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. I took a taxi back to pack my things. In the face of his livid face, I only took a few clothes and left. Most of the things I had added to the household over the years were his, only now did I realize that I only had a very small number of my own things. I could pack all of them in a 28-inch suitcase. I didn't have time to rent a house, so I stayed in a hotel first. When I lay on the bed, I belatedly realized that leaving Jason wasn't as difficult as I had thought. In the past, I never dared to imagine what it would be like to leave him. I thought I would be extremely sad, but now, it wasn't as hard as I had imagined. On the contrary, I also felt a sense of relief, as if a big stone that had been pressing on me had been completely removed. Perhaps, I hadn't loved him as much as I thought I did for a long time. I was just used to loving him and didn't notice that in this messy marriage, my love had been gradually worn away bit by bit. The next day, I had originally planned to sleep until I woke up naturally and enjoy the hard-won relaxation. However, I didn't expect to be woken up by the ringing of the phone early in the morning. I sleepily picked up my mobile phone, only to find that it was Jason's mother calling. As soon as I answered the phone, her voice rang out immediately. "Sorry, Joey. I'm sorry to bother you." Before I could say anything, she continued talking rapidly. "Remember to remind Jason that his eldest uncle's birthday is next Wednesday. Don't forget to remind him to come home. Oh, by the way, don't drink then. Wait until you drive back." I rubbed my temples. "Mom, why don't you call Jason directly?" His mother replied naturally, "Oh, I'm afraid of waking him up. He's so tired from work every day. Unlike you who enjoys a carefree life at home." This was what she often said. In her eyes, Jason was exhausted from working in the office outside, while I was enjoying a carefree life by cooking, washing clothes, cleaning the house, and taking care of Jason's 3 meals a day at home. When they asked me to resign and stay at home before, they promised that they would hire a nanny to do the housework, but later, Jason told me that he didn't like having strangers in the house, and since I was idle at home, I should do it myself. I clenched my phone tightly and forced myself to suppress my anger and said, "Sorry, Auntie. You may not know that Jason and I have already divorced." After saying that, I hung up the phone directly, ignoring Jason's mother's shouting on the other end. However, I didn't have peace until nightfall. Jason called again. When I answered it, his voice showed no emotion. "Come home. Mom and Dad are here." I knew that with his mother's temper, she would definitely come to lecture me. I directly refused. "Your family should solve your own problems. As an outsider, I won't get involved. Your parents are here too." Then he hung up the phone. Looking at the black-screened phone, I sighed. Since the matter had already blown up, it seemed that I couldn't avoid it. Well, that's okay. There were some things that I had wanted to make clear for a long time. When I got home, sure enough, Jason's mother looked at me and smiled. "You're back. Oh, it's normal for young people to lose their temper. Joey might be too bored at home and feel stuffy. It's good for you to go out and relax. But Joey, it's okay for a couple to quarrel once in a while. Jason has to go to work to support the family. Besides, your parents are so old. Do you have to trouble them to fly all the way here? How hard it is for them." I frowned slightly. Jason's mother liked to act like this. On the surface, she spoke politely, but in fact, she was a wolf in sheep's clothing, hiding her sharpness under a gentle exterior. Jason was sitting on the sofa, as if he hadn't heard anything. As always, I suppressed the disappointment in my heart and couldn't help mocking myself. At this time, I still expected him to say something for me. How could that be possible? Jason's mother was a very controlling person. At first, she thought that Jason's first love was too strong-willed and hard to manage, so she threatened Jason with her life that he was not allowed to be with her. Then she chose me, whose parents were both university professors, had good personal conditions, and was rather gentle. I still remember when I served tea to her when we got married. She didn't take it for a long time but took the opportunity to educate me that I should take good care of Jason in the future. She said that it was not easy for him to work hard outside, completely ignoring that I had left my hometown and followed him to a strange place to work. Later, Jason's mother often came to visit. Sometimes I really thought she was very strange. She couldn't bear to see that Jason and I had a good relationship. In fact, there was a period of time after we got married when we had a good life. Jason seemed to want to get along well with me too. We even thought about going to the Maldives for our honeymoon, but after his mother found out, she insisted on going with us. We didn't want to take her, but she didn't say much. She just wiped her tears when Jason came home and could see her. There was nothing we could do but agree to let her go with us. Those days should have been the happiest honeymoon in my life, but until now, I didn't want to recall it at all. It was a complete mess. His mother thought that I should be Jason's nanny and didn't need to have feelings for him. It was enough to take good care of his life. And the most terrifying thing about her was that she always smiled on the surface but made things difficult for me behind my back. For example, I hated celery the most. I thought celery had a strange taste, so I never cooked it at home. But after his mother came, she said on the surface that she would cook for us to let me have a rest, but she would make celery dishes for every meal. Every time I said I didn't like it, she would pretend to be very remorseful and say that she was old and forgot. Then she would keep smiling and pick celery for me. Joey, try the celery made by Mom. I guarantee it's different from what's outside. It's very delicious. It made me unable to eat it, but it seemed bad if I didn't eat it. I secretly complained to Jason several times, but he would impatiently say, "Mom is so old and still comes to cook for you. Instead of being grateful to her, you even speak ill of her. Joey, do you think it's appropriate for you to do this?" Or in the middle of summer when Jason went to work, his mother would say that she couldn't find the air conditioner remote control and couldn't turn on the air conditioner. Every time Jason came back, the remote control could be found miraculously. I had told her several times not to touch my underwear and that I would wash it myself. However, every time I just took it off and put it in the laundry basket, she would put my underwear and socks into the washing machine together in a blink of an eye. But she would always wash Jason separately and would never mix it with socks. None of these were big things, but when these small things piled up, they could really drive a person crazy. Over time, I became more and more depressed. Jason also noticed what his mother had done, but when he was a child, there was a flood in his hometown. It was his mother who carried him on her shoulders to keep him alive. Later, when he was rescued, his mother exhausted her last bit of strength and was directly swept away by the flood. Fortunately, his mother was lucky. She was pulled by a neighbor wading through the water and saved her life. However, his mother had been soaked in the water for too long and left a lifelong illness. Her joints would hurt terribly whenever it was a cloudy and rainy day. Jason always felt that he owed his mother, so he couldn't say a word of reproach to her. So he simply avoided it. After work, he would either find an excuse to work overtime and not come home or just sit in the garage and not come upstairs, escaping from the conflicts between us. It was also from that time that the last bit of warmth between us disappeared. Our relationship began to get worse and worse, and finally, it became irreparable. This time, I didn't endure it silently anymore. I raised my head and looked straight at his mother. "Wasn't it you who went to find my parents?" "What does it have to do with me?" His mother was stunned. "Joey, you." I took a step forward. "Don't always use the excuse that Jason supports the family. I had a job before. It was he who asked me to resign and go to his company, saying that the company needed a reliable accountant. Later, when the company was on the right track, wasn't it you who kicked me out after I'd served my purpose and asked me to resign and stay at home to take care of him? Let's not mention that I used to earn 20 to 30,000 yuan a month before. Just think about it. I cooked 3 meals a day, washed clothes, and mopped the floor at home. How much would it cost to hire a nanny? How could I be supported by him? Do you mean that if I don't marry him now, he won't work anymore?" Jason stood up. "Joey, how can you talk to Mom like that?" I exploded all of a sudden. I strode up to him and shouted, "That's your mother, not mine. Don't give me that crap. She didn't give birth to me or raise me for a day. Before, for your sake, I called her Mom. Now that I'm getting divorced from you, you're willing to recognize her as Mom everywhere, but I'm not that cheap. Jason frowned and wanted to speak, but I cut him off. Now you know to shout at me? What about when your mother forced me to eat celery? What about when your mother tortured me by not letting me turn on the air conditioner in the middle of summer? What about when your mother insisted on going on our honeymoon with us? You're such a coward that you only dared to hide in the garage and didn't dare to say a word. Jason, how dare you say this to me? What kind of man are you? What the hell are you? I shouted and yelled. All the grievances and anger that had accumulated over the years poured out. In the end, my eyes were red, and my rationality was completely burned out. I was almost crazy. The whole family was shocked by me. Jason opened his eyes wide, and all his words got stuck in his throat. After a while, his expression became a bit complicated. I don't know if it was my illusion, but I seemed to see a hint of guilt in his eyes. My father was so angry that his face turned livid. My mother hugged me and started crying. Joey, she said in a trembling voice. I buried my head in my mother's arms and cried silently. Having come to this point, I finally understood who I owed the most to. It was my parents who didn't agree to me being with Jason at first but had to agree because I insisted, and myself who had suffered so much. Look at this child. Is it necessary to make such a fuss? And now she's even crying. Jason's mother quickly came to her senses and said with a fake smile, we're all family. It seems that you have resentment towards Mom. Maybe Mom is old and sometimes not so sharp-minded and not to your liking. But Joey, Mom has always regarded you as her own daughter. This kind of talk might have fooled me when I was a love-struck fool before. My mother, who was so old, immediately turned her head and spat, I'm not dead yet. Do I need you to be her mother? Jason's mother was embarrassed. Dear in-laws, what are you talking about? The child is young and doesn't know any better. You're so old. Why are you joining in the child's fuss? My mother sneered and directly grabbed me. Before you insisted on marrying him while crying and making a fuss. Mom and Dad had no choice. Now that you're finally become sober, that's good. Come on, Mom will take you home. With that, the three of us in my family were about to leave. Jason hurriedly came over to stop us. Mom, Joey misunderstood this matter today. Please don't. My father shook off his arm coldly. I didn't agree when she wanted to marry you at first. But Joey liked you, and we had no choice. We didn't ask for betrothal gifts, a house, or a car. We even gave Joey a dowry of 500,000 yuan just so that you would appreciate it and treat her well in the future. How did you promise me back then? Jason was left speechless under my father's interrogation. My father suppressed his anger with great effort. You said you would treat her well, but what about now? My father had always been cheerful in the past. Every time Jason visited, he would address him affectionately as son-in-law. During festivals, sometimes when Jason didn't go back home, he wouldn't mind. He even told me not to quarrel with Jason, saying that Jason was busy with his career and we shouldn't delay important matters. This was the first time he had been so stern. Jason stepped back in shame. Dad, don't call me Dad. I don't have a son like you. Jason's mother still wanted to say something, but my mother turned around fiercely and shouted, Get out of here. Don't make me slap you. My mother was the gentlest Southern woman. She had always spoken softly in the past. This was the first time I knew that she could also be so protective. In the end, I still couldn't go home. Mainly because there was still a 1-month cooling off period, and besides I still needed to deal with the division of property. My parents still had to go to work, so they had no choice but to leave me some money and then go back. They also didn't forget to tell me, don't wrong yourself. Relax well this month. If anything happens, tell Mom and Dad. At night, I lay on the bed in the hotel and had a good sleep for the first time. In the 4th year of marriage, I didn't know whether it was because of Jason's mother or his relationship with Luna, but I began to suffer from severe insomnia. Sometimes I would keep my eyes open all night long and couldn't fall asleep until dawn. For a period of time, I didn't want to do anything every day. I just felt so tired and didn't know what the point of living was. It was really boring. After going to the hospital for a diagnosis, it turned out that I had moderate depression. I took the medicine, but it didn't work very well. I still couldn't fall asleep. Now, when I closed my eyes, I felt a sense of relief. I could finally have a good dream. 04 I started sending out resumes and looking for a job. Although my parents said they would support me and let me relax for a while longer, I didn't want to be so disconnected from society anymore. In fact, the school I graduated from was even better than Jason's. At first, I received offers from the 4 major accounting firms during the campus recruitment, but not long after I started working, Jason asked me to resign. At that time, the accountant in his company left and he couldn't find a reliable person to fill the position for a while, so he asked me to go to his company. Later, when he found a suitable person, he asked me to resign again. So in these past few years, I had been a housewife all the time. Sometimes, when I saw the daily lives posted by many classmates on Moments, some of them had realized their dreams and were working in the 4 major accounting firms or had gone abroad to work on Wall Street. Some started their own companies, or went back to their hometowns to take the civil service examination and were very happy with their families. Only I, after all these years, had nothing left except for this messy and failed marriage. Fortunately, I was still young and could start all over again. At night when I returned to the hotel, my phone suddenly received a reminder. It was from the home surveillance, reminding me that someone had entered the house. I was just about to swipe it away but accidentally clicked on it.in the video. Jason and Luna were walking into the house together. I was stunned and didn't turn off the video. As soon as I left, he couldn't wait to bring her home. Well, he probably couldn't wait for a long time. When I proposed divorce, he was probably secretly happy in his heart. Jason seemed to be drunk. His eyes were half closed and he was staggering. Luna tried hard to support him and let him lean on the sofa and then poured him a glass of water. Jason took it and took a sip, then spat it out directly and frowned. Cold water? Where's the hangover soup? Luna said helplessly. What hangover soup? I don't know how to make it. Just drink some water for now. Jason threw the cup on the ground, swayed and stood up. The corner of Luna's mouth curled up, and she helped him walk towards the bedroom. It was really disgusting. Thinking that they would have an affair on the bed where I used to sleep, I couldn't help feeling sick. However, unexpectedly, after a while, Jason ran out of the bedroom with his clothes in disarray. Luna was only left with a small camisole on and was in a hurry to pull him, but he suddenly shook off her hand and said drunkenly, "You're not my wife." "You're not?" Luna bit her lower lip. "I'm Luna." "Didn't you say you were going to divorce your wife?" "No way." Jason waved his hand, speaking incoherently. "I didn't divorce. I won't divorce. You're not my wife. Who are you? You go away." Luna was both angry and annoyed. She had no choice but to put on her clothes randomly and slammed the door and left. Jason tripped over something and fell to the ground, groaning in pain. "Joey, I fell down." The living room was silent. He muttered again, "Joey, my head hurts. Come and rub it for me." No one responded. He just lay in the living room in such a mess and fell asleep. I put down my phone, not knowing what it was like in my heart. I thought that after the divorce, Jason would immediately be with Luna. I thought he liked her very much. Jason was a person with strong principles, at least when it came to me. He didn't allow me to tell the people in the company about our relationship. He didn't allow me to eat in the car. There were many things he didn't allow me to do, but all these don'ts didn't apply to Luna at all. He had no principles when it came to her. Sometimes I hated him very much. If I didn't know that he was so blatantly partial to her, I wouldn't feel so pitiful and pathetic. I sneered. Sure enough, he wanted me to take care of him. Every time Jason got drunk outside, I would make hangover soup for him, rub his head until he fell asleep, and then prepare the light meals he liked in the morning. He was probably already used to being taken care of by me like this. At 2 o'clock in the morning, I woke up thirsty and got up to drink water, but I couldn't fall asleep when I came back. After thinking about it, I opened the surveillance again. Jason had already woken up. In the pitch-dark night, he was sitting alone on the sofa with a blank look in his eyes, not knowing what he was thinking. He didn't seem to be fully awake yet. After a long time, he covered his stomach and said hoarsely, "Joey, my stomach hurts. Where's my stomach medicine?" Jason had drunk too much and damaged his stomach because of too many business dinners and social engagements in the past few days. Although I had taken care of it for him these years and it had almost recovered, it still hurt whenever he drank alcohol. I would sort the medicines into different categories and put them in boxes, marking clearly how many pills to take each time and the expiration date with sticky notes to make it easy to find. He had taken the medicine so many times, but he still didn't know where it was. The surveillance could be connected to my phone to allow me to speak, but I didn't say anything and just watched coldly. Jason bent down slightly and shouted at the top of his voice, "Joey, Joey." The only response was the ticking sound of the clock in the living room at night. So he struggled to stand up and started looking for the medicine. The cabinet that I had tidied up was rummaged through by him and became a mess. He threw all the things on the ground. When he was looking under the TV cabinet, he finally found the medicine box I had put there. Jason picked it up but didn't take the medicine. He just stared blankly at the sticky note on it. I could recall the words on it even with my eyes closed. Dashi, hydrocalcite, chewable tablets. Take 1 to 2 tablets each time, 3 times a day. Take it 1 to 2 hours after meals or before going to bed. Those were the words I wrote stroke by stroke. I was full of naive and stupid love, thinking that I could exchange my sincerity for his. Finally, I understood that what I thought was a reckless dedication was just worthless trash in other people's eyes. It could be kicked away casually. Jason was still squatting there, staring fixedly at the medicine box without moving. After a long time, he slowly buried his head in his knees and remained silent. That night, he didn't take the medicine but smoked alone in the living room. He just sat there silently all night long. 05 When I went to Jason's company to check the accounts and divide the property, I met Luna. I pretended not to see her and wanted to walk past her. Actually, when it came to affairs like cheating, I had never liked to put all the blame on the woman. If Jason could control himself, this kind wouldn't happen. But Luna took a step forward and blocked my way. "Joey, right? I want to talk to you." I looked her up and down. Sure enough, she was a newly graduated student, full of youthful vitality and with blatant provocation that she didn't bother to hide at all. It was as if she had already assumed the position of Mrs. Jason. "I don't think we have anything to talk about. We wouldn't have any intersection in the future either." But Luna didn't think so. She took a step forward. "I think it's necessary for us to talk. I want to talk to you about Jason's affairs. You don't mind spending half an hour, do you?" After thinking about it, I agreed, mainly because I didn't want to be pestered by her all the time. If I didn't agree to her today, maybe she would keep pestering me tomorrow. Coincidentally, I also wanted to hear what she had to say. In the coffee shop downstairs of the company, Luna ordered a cup of Blue Mountain coffee and said with a smile, "The coffee here is very fragrant. I heard that the coffee beans were brought back by the boss himself and then carefully hand ground. Jason likes the coffee here the most." I forced a smile. Girls who had just entered society still had a childish bravado and always thought that they could play with other people's emotions. I said impatiently, "What exactly do you want to say?" Luna took a sip of coffee. "Jason doesn't like you. He told me so himself. I'm very grateful that you were sensible enough to divorce him, but I think since you've already separated, there's no need to have any contact in the future, right?" I understood. Probably because last night Jason called my name and drove her away, she felt that she had lost face and had a sense of crisis, which was why she was so eager to come to me to assert her dominance today. I lowered my eyelids. "Firstly, whether to divorce or not is a matter between the two of us. You, an outsider, have no right to make irresponsible remarks. What if I don't divorce today? What can you do? Secondly, Jason and I are legally married. What's your identity to talk to me? A third party who meddles in other people's marriage? Do you believe that if I expose the evidence of you destroying other people's families, you'll have to pack up and leave immediately? Do you think between the company that he has worked hard for so many years and you, who will Jason choose?" After saying that, I raised my head and looked at Luna. "I don't want to argue with you. I think it's beneath my dignity. But if you dare to come and provoke me again, I won't be so easygoing." Luna's face turned livid. She gritted her teeth tightly but didn't dare to say a word. I stood up and sneered softly, "Oh, by the way, his family always drinks instant coffee. Have you never tasted real hand-ground coffee? With that, I picked up my bag and left. After going upstairs, Jason rushed to the finance office in a hurry. His expression was a bit complicated. It seemed that he wanted to say something but didn't know how to say it. Finally, he forced out a sentence. Have you eaten? Let's go to have dinner together later. I looked at his rather cautious expression in surprise. Jason pursed his lips and turned his head to one side. What was wrong with Jason, who had always been cold to me? Was he still drunk and hadn't sobered up from last night? It seemed that he was trying to make up to me. Jason said in a low voice, I've thought about it. I was wrong before. I won't contact Luna anymore in the future. I'll send her to the branch company and won't let her appear in front of you again. I frowned. Jason, are you out of your mind? He subconsciously got angry, but then suppressed it and continued, I don't think we need to come to this. We've been together for so many years, Joey. Let's just forget about it this time. I sneered. Are you willing to break up with Luna? Jason said indifferently, both you and I were just briefly interested in her. Don't think too much. We didn't do anything. I did believe that. Even when Jason had the closest relationship with Luna before, he had never stayed out all night. In the situation like yesterday, he even pushed her away. I guessed that he was just looking for the shadow of his first love in Luna. But so what? Anyway, he loved either this one or that one, but it would never be me. I can't just forget about it. I said with an expressionless face, hurry up and finish dividing the property. I'm waiting to get the divorce certificate and go back to my hometown. Jason frowned. Joey, you were the one who was desperate to say that you loved me and wanted to marry me. What's wrong with you now? Just because of those potato chips. Even now, he was still talking about the potato chips. We were both shrewd people who had been in the business world for so many years. How could he not know what I really cared about? He was just deliberately avoiding the important and dwelling on the trivial. I moved closer to him and said softly, Jason, do you know what the non-renewable resources in the world are? He was a bit confused. What? Coal, crude oil, natural gas. And love. Jason was stunned. Love is really a wonderful thing. It can be the most indestructible armor and spear in the world, invincible and advancing bravely, but love is also the most fragile thing in the world. It can be worn away unconsciously. My love has been used up, just like a fire that has burned out. There's none left. 06 I don't know if Jason had lost his mind, but he actually started to apologize to me. He began to call me and send me text messages every day. There was nothing important, just things like, I found a restaurant that's quite nice. Let's go there tonight, shall we? How about we go on a honeymoon again? How about going to Tahiti this time? The gardenias on the roadside are blooming so beautifully. Let's buy a pot and take it home to raise it. It was as if he had suddenly changed his nature. I even suspected that Jason had been possessed by something unclean. In the past, these were the words that I sent to him. But he seldom replied. After he got together with Luna, we hardly had any communication at all. After thinking about it, I kind of understood that Jason was panicked. Actually, people are all selfish animals. The purpose of all activities is to make themselves live more comfortably. When he was with me, he thought I was boring and liked to find the feeling of his first love in Luna to make himself happier. But now he suddenly realized that I would also leave, and he didn't want to lose me, the fool who loved him wholeheartedly and took meticulous care of him. Comparing the two, he still thought I was more important. After all, young girls were everywhere, but there was only one fool like me who loved him so much. So he wanted to shrink back into his comfort zone and even sent Luna away for this. Did he love me? I don't think so. Maybe he didn't love his first love either. Otherwise, how could he have compromised and broken up with his first love just because his mother didn't agree? He didn't love Luna either. Otherwise, he wouldn't have broken up with her so easily. He didn't love me even more. He was just greedy for the comfort and sense of security that I brought to him. He just wanted someone to always stand behind him so that he could see when he turned around. To be honest, when I think about it now, I feel that I was unbelievably stupid before. He and his mother tortured me like that, but I could still endure it. maybe being love-struck really makes people live like they're not themselves. One has to endure enough hardships, cry all the tears, and hit the wall before being willing to turn back. In the following days, Jason seemed like a different person. He came to look for me downstairs in the hotel every day. He would call me, "I've brought you the steamed dumplings from your favorite restaurant. Come down and have a taste." His speaking attitude even carried a hint of ingratiation, just like I used to be. Suddenly, I remembered that when we were together before, I really liked the steamed dumplings from that restaurant, but that restaurant was too far away and didn't offer delivery. Only when Jason came back would he pass by on his way. But although I had asked him to bring them for me many times, he had never brought them for me. Not even once. Every time when I asked, he either said he forgot or was too tired. Now he thought of buying them for me. Unfortunately, I didn't want to eat them anymore. I didn't pay any attention to Jason anymore. After the 1-month cooling off period was over, I directly called him to come and get the divorce certificate. At first, Jason didn't want to come. "Joey, I really don't think we need to come to this. I said I would change. Besides, you're not young anymore. After getting divorced, how will you live in the future?" He was still saying the same thing even now. "Don't bother yourself about it, Jason. Could it be that you're reluctant to get divorced?" I taunted. "Why are you so clingy, like a dog?" These were the words he used to say to me, and now I gave them back to him as they were. Jason wasn't angry. He just lowered his head and said in a hoarse voice, "So, you won't turn back, will you?" I replied firmly, "Yes." The setting sun elongated Jason's figure. Only then did I notice that he seemed to have lost a lot of weight. His shadow on the ground was long and lonely. Finally, he said in a low voice, "I understand." The divorce certificate was obtained smoothly. Jason didn't say a word about the division of property and let me take half of his assets. When Jason's mother knew that I was going to take half of the property, she almost cursed her lips off. The last layer of her hypocritical mask was torn off. She cursed me for being shameless, saying that I was after her son's money and only knew how to cling to her son and suck his blood. I didn't listen to her completely. I just cursed, "It's none of your business. If you keep meddling so much, be careful that your lifespan will be shortened." Then I hung up the phone. Jason's mother used the old trick again this time. She threatened him with her life, asking him not to give me the money, to sue me, and to make me leave the marriage with nothing. But for some reason, he didn't listen to his mother this time. However, I wasn't interested in knowing the reason either. I passed the interview of an accounting firm. Although it wasn't one of the 4 major ones, it was quite good. Coincidentally, they had a branch in my hometown. After I applied, I went back to my hometown to work directly. My parents didn't force me to go on blind dates or get married anymore. Every day after work, I would go home for dinner. When I was free, I would go traveling or take a walk with my parents. Every day was very happy. I never thought of the past again. Only occasionally when I woke up from a midnight dream, I would have a feeling as if a lifetime had passed. Those days when I cried in the middle of the night, I used to think that it was a pain that I would never forget in my life. I thought that I would never be able to get out of it, but now, I could hardly remember the sadness at that time. I stopped taking the medicine and was no longer depressed. I could sleep for 8 hours every day and never had insomnia again. It was really nice.